Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Jan's Opening Clinic. I believe this will be the penultimate of the current season, where I do my best to answer Chess24 Premium users' opening questions. And I believe in this one we have a bunch of questions on the meaning of life. I'm not sure that's within my area of expertise for both the openings and the meaning of life. But let's jump right into the action and see what we get. We do have position after 1e4, but we also have a question by Mr. whoCriedwolf, who's saying, "Hi Jan, how would you assess the following position with white to move?" Position on the diagram, yeah, that's what Magnus played against Kayakin. This seems to be quite a topical line in the Ruy Lopez being played by the boss himself, Magnus Carlsen. However, despite being better developed, black has a weakness on d6 to worry about. I wonder what you and your engines think about this position and which color you would prefer to play over the board. Does black have enough counterplay, for example, potential knight jumps to e4, d3, pressurizing the f2 pawn, or is there a clear way for white to avoid dangerous counterplay and stabilize the position in order to get the precious plus equal? Keep up the great work. Thank you, thank you. Yeah, I guess it's somewhere in the middle. Let's bring up the great board and have a look around. So e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, a6, bishop a4, knight f6, castles, bishop to c5, c3, and the move short castles, which marks the beginning of this line. I'm more of a b5 guy myself, but that leads to very different self positions. So short castles, d4, bishop to a7. Now white has options, but he does have this very direct way of playing, which will bring us to the question by Mr. whoCriedwolf. D takes e5, knight e4, queen d5, knight c5, bishop c2, and black has nothing better than going for this endgame with knight e7, queen d1, d5, or d6 takes, queen takes, c takes d. So if I had to choose, I'd choose white for sure. White, if anybody is better, it's white. Black does have the isolated pawn, and he doesn't really have a big lead in development to compensate for it. But it's not easy for white to, however you want to call it, stabilize and get something substantial out of this position too. There are some key tactics I think Magnus showed. The one big point in his game against Kayakin, which was something like rook d1, bishop g4, rook takes d6, and bishop f5. Clever little switchback. And if white were to take after knight f5, black is already better because of his lead in development. So how did the game go? It was something like knight a3, knight e4, I believe, with equality, because now black is very active. So white shouldn't go for such direct stuff, but he has other moves, like rook to e1 is possible, when I couldn't see anything better than rook to e8. And once again, there are options like bishop to e3, when I guess black should equalize with something like knight d5. My computer says bishop f5. Maybe this was played by Laurent, bishop f5, knight a3, and he had to suffer a bit. But knight d5 exists, and I could not really find any way to a significant advantage for white, which I guess isn't really there. But you make a random move, or maybe not that random, you make a move like knight a3, and it's not completely obvious to me, move by move, how black is supposed to play. So I do think that black should hold, but since white can get this without knowing a whole lot of theory or just following kind of obvious moves with d takes e5, I'm not sure I'd be happy with this as an outcome of the opening. I guess with Magnus's technique you're not too scared of losing this position. But to me, yeah, I would not be too thrilled about ending up here. Not saying that this is necessarily bad for black, I think it's somewhere on the verge of between here. Plus equal and equal. And I guess I would avoid it if I could, but it doesn't really mean you can't use this as a line you want to play, since it's a scenario that happens quite often with black, that you get some positions which are tenable, but somewhat uncomfortable maybe, or depends on your view of things. But yeah, after knight a3, as an example, I could not really come up with such a clear-cut way. Probably go rook e8 anyway. And, well, rook e1 now actually transposes to rook e1, rook e8, knight a3. And, yeah, white is a teeny tiny bit better. There's no obvious way how to get the pieces out. You still shouldn't lose even if you play a move like d5. It's defendable, but it's, yeah, more on the border to plus equal. So it's not my favorite line for black. That is mentioned. If this is the worst thing that can happen, then yeah, I'm sure it has to be a playable line. I would prefer not to do it, because as mentioned here, white surely does have other moves as well. Bishop g5, rook e1 and whatnot. So I don't see that much upside in it for black. But still, it's a line that Magnus has played twice and some other strong players have played. So it is clearly a line that's out there and will remain being out there. There was Mr. whoCriedwolf. Sorry, I can't give you like a clear-cut way to equality, but I'm not sure there is one. I think it's this type of position where you're probably supposed to suffer a bit and then make a draw if you play well. Frialapan is saying, "Hi Jan, thanks for doing another season. These are incredibly informative. Thank you, thank you. In the bishop f4 queen's gambit decline C diagram, I know 6b6 leads to fairly easy equality, but I want to avoid simplifications. Is 6 knight b7 still playable these days? What is black's plan after 6 knight b7 c7 c5? Thanks in advance." Thinking break? So d4, let's say knight f6, c4, e6, knight f3, d5, knight c3, bishop e7, bishop f4, castles e3. And as frialapan mentioned, b6 is becoming trendier by the minute. I'm not sure. It's fairly easy equality, but it's certainly a line trying to equalize where a lot of progress has been made following the likes of Vishyana and Caruana. Carlsen himself. Nakamura also has been playing this. So yeah, this is becoming trendy. But the question was, is knight b7 still playable? And what should black do after c5? Or what the plans were or whatever. So yeah, I don't think knight b7 has been refuted. I was a bit surprised too. It became clearly the third option after c5 and b6 at the highest level. I guess there are two reasons. First of all, this line bishop to e2, which Grishuk, amongst others, has been championing. It looks like it's not completely harmless, at least, these types of endgames. And once again, black is fighting for equality without that much upside. Of course, I'm sure you can make this work. b6 or takes, followed by a6. There are options here, but it's not exactly a picnic for black. So this bishop e2, d takes c, short castles is a clever little line that you have to be aware of. And yeah, c5 is the principal move, I think, nowadays, even though we had a recent game, Kayakin Aronian, a3, c5 is supposed to be kind of a draw, and the other lines with queen to c2, c5 have also been well analyzed as being okay for black. So c5 is the core question, where black has to make up his mind. He has three options. I don't think any one of those has been refuted, but none of those like force equality or lead to simplifications as b6 or c5, if it goes well, could do. Then again, that's what you're looking for, so it's not all bad. I'll just give you the three options. I always thought the move knight h5 was sort of the most sensible, getting rid of this bishop on f4 as quickly as possible. And play typically develops something along the lines of white develops, black goes b6, b4, a5. White keeps the structure here, black goes c6, short castles. I think queen c7, g3, bishop a6 is the main line nowadays, and you get this type of structure where the most direct attempts with bishop takes a6, rook takes a6, and some queen e2, I believe black has found ways to neutralize. So white typically goes for some way to keep the structure alive, some king g2 or h4, and then playing more slowly in this kind of locked up position, where I think if black defends well, he is normally supposed to hold this, but they've made it look not that much fun with black, and I guess this is a reason why this line is no longer that popular. Having said all these things, I still believe that black should be able to hold these positions. I don't know, you play rook fb8, you play g6 at an opportune moment, and one day you start doubling rooks on the a file, and if white vacates it, you can take and then activate them via a3. So black should hold, but it's turned out not to be that much fun. The other move, or the other two moves that are here, one is c6, which will more or less follow the same plan with b6, a5, but while keeping this knight and this bishop on the board. I had this sort of novelty h3 when I was 15 years ago, and I was quite proud of myself because it made more sense to me than starting with bishop d3, first of all, with stopping knight h5, and secondly, after b6, b4, a5, a3, if this bishop goes here in one go, then we don't lose time having moved it already, and we can try some sharp stuff here, like takes followed by b5, which has been analyzed quite deeply by now as well, but it was interesting back then. Black normally avoids it, and I believe plays a cunning little waiting move in form of h6 here himself. h6 is a useful little move, and the logic is, of course, that after bishop d3, now we go bishop a6. The direct lines no longer work as well with h6, so once again we get sort of a stable position where white has the space advantage, but black is very, very solid. This is sort of a sample line, how things go. I believe Mickey Adams has been playing like this, and the rook can come to c8, rook fc1, rook fc8, let's say. And once again, black is very, very solid. White has this small space advantage, but black usually has enough counterplay along the a file to keep the balance. So currently, this could change. I'm also not very deep in those, but I think those look a little better than these knight h5 lines, even though knight h5 always struck me as the more logical move. If I had to play this tomorrow, I'd probably go for this setup with c6 and just sit there and wait. Third among the candidates is knight e4. Sorry, knight e4 here, which leads to a very different play. It has never really caught on as a main line, but if you're looking for action and a sharper position, maybe this is the place to go, because positions can get a little weird here. Often black goes for f5, sometimes he goes for knight takes c3, followed by b6. And as far as I know, it hasn't been refuted either. I should say that if white wants to keep it dry, he can take and go knight to e5, which is not exactly a party for black either, but black is supposed to equalize here. Takes b6 or whatnot. So after knight e4, they typically play this move rook to c1. The point being that now f5 setups don't seem that great for black, because let's say I go h3. Black is no longer really in time to undermine the queenside here with whatever, c6. And followed by b6. Even short castles looks quite nice for white. Somehow works tactically. And white will maintain his structure on the queenside with b4. So after rook c1, they usually don't go for this f5 stuff, but they take on c3. The point being that after rook takes c3, now you go b6. And there are some clever tactics connected to it. c5 I think was fine. And b4 here also didn't do very much. Something like a5, a3. Am I doing this right? But yeah, let's say c6, followed by bishop a6, and once again the control of the a file will keep black kind of alright. So after b6, there's some more weird lines like c6. How does this go? Knight f6, a3, with very strange play defined by these pawns being here. And which, yeah, I'm not sure if there's been any verdict. I think black is supposed to be alright there. Of course, rook c1 is not forced. There's also queen c2, when f5 makes more sense, because now white is not really in time to keep his structure on the queen side. Let's say some line like this here. b6 is much stronger, b4 is met by a5. This rook is hanging, so this doesn't really work for white. And therefore, after queen c2, f5 is a more playable setup. So long story short, I don't think it's been refuted. I'm not quite sure why people stopped going here. I guess bishop e2 has something to do with it. And after c5, yeah, I think you suffer a bit in knight h5. Knight e4 is interesting. And c6 seems to be the most solid, intending to follow up with this. b6, b4, a5, a3, and now h6 seemed cleverer than next move. Bishop a6, when yeah, I think black should hold. So that's the current status as far as I'm aware. In knight b7, I guess b6 gives you more hope of reaching a cleaner position, move by move. But knight b7, I don't think it's gone for good. Thanks, frialapan. Then we have Spekkoek. He's saying, hi Jan, in the Queen's Gambit accepted, I started using 2 knight c6 against 2 e4. I guess he means 3 knight c6 against 3 e4. How wise do you consider this approach? I don't believe it's unsound, but it is unorthodox. I used to play the Linares variation. I don't know what that is, but it's more risky and less logical to me. P.S. I had 1 minute left to write this. Otherwise, I would have elaborated a lot more. I see. You would have added a move. Anyway, let's get a board. So d4, d5, c4, d takes c4, 3 e4. Still the most critical move. And you're saying knight to c6. This exists, has always been around. It has never really reached mainline status. That still belongs firmly to knight f6, e5, knight d5. Which, yeah, I think is a very complex position, but a very playable line for black. And e5, knight f3, e takes d, bishop c4, knight c6 castles, bishop e6 is the other big main line. This is more a move-by-move thing where black is trying to prove he's okay. Move by move after both bishop takes e6 and bishop b5. As far as I know, he is, but I think the discussions are still sort of ongoing now. So knight c6, my problem with it, I could never see how black equalizes after just knight f3. Now bishop g4 is the idea. And here white has 2 options. One that I've been fooling around with is bishop takes c4, which is mainly directed against black's wish to get the structure that you get in the main line after d5. But bishop c4, I guess black comes very close to equalizing after e6. I was doing stuff like this. Takes, knight e5, queen c3, takes. My great point was ed queen b5 check. When white is a teeny tiny bit better in some endgame like this. But it's not exactly a refutation of the line, it was just more of a pragmatic way to deal with it. But yeah, d5 is critical. And knight e5, bishop f4, knight g6, you typically get a position like this. Let's say knight f6 takes. This pawn is always poisoned somehow, so black should try to keep it close, go e5. And yeah, I could never find like equality here for black. I'm not sure if that's what you're looking for. And it's certainly a fighting position. There's some funky moves like knight h4, which didn't really work. So typically the black setup is a6, followed by bishop d6. But yeah, I just don't like it very much for black. Bishop e2 or h3 or any move. I just think white's position is more pleasant to play. This maneuver I always like, bishop e2, bishop d6, and knight to d2, en route to c4. And yeah, I'm not a giant fan of the black position, so I wouldn't play it. And still, you get positions that are full of fight, but I do think that white is better. And I do think that equalizing wise, e5 or knight f6 give you a much better shot, especially since knight f6, it's not a particularly dry position either. This is just strategically complex stuff like pick a move here, knight c6, knight b6, bishop f5, all lead to strange play. So yeah, I would probably be looking here instead of knight to c6. But if you're happy with these positions I gave in these lines, then yeah, by all means go for it. Yeah, equality-wise, I could never really find it. So that is that. Then we have Mr. Ali H 9999 saying, "Hi Jan, love your work in these clinics. Thank you. My problem is with black against G3 systems against after 1d4. I would like to play Benoni setup versus white's fianchetto, but I have a tough time when they don't play d5 at all and prefer d takes c5. This dc is a key concern. They leave the tension in the center or push d5, then I'm happy. So at what stage is it best to go c5? For example, d4, knight f6, c4, g6, g3. Can I play c5 here, or best to wait with bishop g7? Or is Benoni not really possible after g6, g3 because of this annoying d takes c5 question?" That's an interesting topic, and yeah, stuff has changed there. Over, I don't know if it's the last couple of years, but I've only noticed this d takes c5 option fairly recently. I think Gelfand used it against Svidler, and it's a very serious move, surprisingly. The bad news first, I don't think the move order matters very much. He will always get more or less the same position. Like c5, d takes c5. You can include bishop g7, bishop g2 at any moment. Probably sooner or later you will reclaim this pawn with queen a5 check, knight c3. Let's say you go bishop g7 now. Bishop g2, queen takes c5, and queen to a4. This seems to be the key move. And yeah, I couldn't find like equality for black. I agree with you, it's an annoying option. There are some direct ways to play, like knight g4, but after knight a3 I couldn't really make it work for black. And if you play something slower, like let's say castles, bishop e3, queen c7, white also gets a pleasant position with knight h3, d6, knight f4. There was some weeded game, maybe bishop d7, knight to d5. It also looked like white had something to work with. So I'm with you. I think it's an interesting line for white to play. I don't have a good answer. I believe if you insist on playing with c5, you should probably go for this move order, castles, and after knight c3 play d6. White players will play knight f3, and now you can play c5. I think Magnus and recently Mamedyarov, for example, have they been using this move order? I'm not sure. I think Magnus has. Not sure about Mamedyarov. Have been using this, which comes with a different set of challenges. But after short castles, well, first of all, after d5 you get the Benoni that you've been going for all the way. After short castles, there is this move knight to c6. When after d5, knight to a5, I'm assuming nature of play-wise you're happy here. You follow up with a6, rook b8, b5, and it's complicated stuff, but I don't think it's been refuted. The one drawback here is that white once again has d takes c5 as an option. But these positions after d takes c5, I guess they're kind of alright for black if you know what you're doing, move by move. I think I covered this in a previous episode and I could not find any advantage for white here. So yeah, I'm with you. I think it's a problem. I haven't spent boatloads of time on these c5 things, but dc5 certainly does look like a pretty tempting new option for white if black starts with c5 at any point soon. So my fix, if you want to stay in this territory, would be to play with d6, c5. Other than that, I'm sure you're aware there is this very solid system with c6 followed by d5, which in terms of equalizing is probably the most reliable. And of course you also have a wide array of playable King's Indian systems like d6 followed by knight b7 and e5, d6 followed by knight c6 and bishop f5, or knight c6, a6, and so on and so forth. But within the family, yeah, I kind of see the problem, and I would probably look at this d6 followed by c5 if you still want to give white at least a fair chance to reach Benoni type positions. Then again, of course, people are different and not sure everybody is into these dc5 structures, so c5 will still, I don't know how popular dc is, I would guess give you an 80% chance of facing either d5 or knight f3, But yeah, I do very much agree that dc5 is a serious option and annoying from the black point of view. Thank you for the question, sir. What else do we have? We have AmbitiousPawn saying, Dear Jan, I have a small question. What is the meaning of life? Could it be so simple as 1e4? I don't know. What are the joke answers? The most stereotyped joke answer is 42, but already in high school, these Douglas Adams guys annoyed me that were telling people, oh, don't you know 42 is the meaning of life? Speaking of which, I think it's in Fyodorovich's answer over here. So the meaning of life is also a Monty Python movie from the year 1983. I don't think it's considered to be a very good Monty Python movie. Other than that, I don't know. 1e4. What does philosophy say? I'm not well read. I did a brief Google check on the meaning of life, but it looks like there's no simple answers. Who would have thought? From what I've seen, I guess I'm more of an existentialist than a nihilist. So even though, if anybody smart who's read books out there is watching this, I will get a lot of input on my cluelessness. So, what was I going to say? What does nihilism say? That's the absurdity of the human condition, that kind of stuff. That we're trying to add meaning where there is none. I'm not sure. I guess you can create kind of your own meaning. By the way, I'm aware, AmbitiousPawn, you're not looking for a serious answer. I haven't thought about this for a while. And I do suffer from existential angst when you're trying to create your own meaning and not quite getting there. So, I really don't know. Is it caring for others? Is it children? I'm gonna have to Google search meaning of life and happiness a little more. Maybe 1e4, if it gives you a goal to crush people in the Sicilian, can be as meaningful as anything. So, yeah. Time for some more Googling. Or maybe that is the absurdity of the human condition, that I will keep researching it. But thanks for bringing up that topic, AmbitiousPawn. I never thought about it. So 1e4. What was Fyodorovich saying? He was saying d4 was better than e4, or what was it? Sorry. Boris Spassky once related that one of his last conversations with Fischer was about which first move is best. Apparently they came to the conclusion that d4 is better than e4 because the pawn is protected. So not only is e4 not best by test, it is not the answer to the questions about the meaning of life either. The answer to that, as everyone knows, is 42. Yeah, as mentioned. Yeah. But it remains to be seen if this has anything to do with the Sicilian Najdorf. Although maybe Jan is an obvious admirer of Heidegger's Sein und Zeit note. I've never read any Heidegger. He's an existentialist dude, right? Can enlighten us on that one. Nah, sorry, I'm not that smart. It's called Sein und Zeit. Yeah, sorry. I got nothing. Except for, I don't like this 42 stuff. I don't know. Is it such a good joke? Why does everybody think? It's funny when you say, meaning of life is 42. I guess I missed something all these years. Do we have more chess questions? We have Venkat 22 897. Question on Petroff. I've seen black side players place their bishops on d6 or e7 squares. Just trying to understand the best setup. Where to place the other pieces in both setups. And high-level middle game plans for both setups. My favorite word, the P word. Also, it would be wonderful if someone can do a video on Petroff defense for black side. considering the number of times it has been played at the highest levels. Yeah, that's not planned. I don't think we have any experts around, but we can certainly look at the positions. Even though the Petroff is a very, very concrete opening, it's very move by move, which is my cup of tea, but that makes it harder to describe where the pieces go and what the high level middle game plans for both sides are. So here we go. I'm assuming by saying bishop to d6 or bishop to e7, you are talking about this position, which, along with 5 knight c3, is still the main position, the main tabia of the Petroff. Here black has a choice between, nowadays, 3 sort of different setups. The old way to play used to be knight c6, short castles, followed by, and now bishop e7. This has slightly gone out of fashion because I think after knight bd2 they dislike black's position. Bishop f5, rook e1, knight takes d2, queen takes d2, or knight d6, knight f1. It's playable, and there's still very strong players doing this kind of stuff, but I guess the argument is the knight on c6 can sometimes be a bit misplaced, so why put it there? Therefore, the recent fashion is to either start with bishop e7 or bishop f5. They usually transpose into each other and keep this knight flexible until white has shown his cards. So here white has a bunch of options along the way. After rook e1, now you go short castles, not knight to c6. And the setup with knight bd2, while still being a viable mainline, I believe is considered less dangerous if we haven't committed to knight to c6. And we can now go knight to d6, offering this exchange of bishops and with precise play. I think black is supposed to handle this, even though it remains a very possible option for white. There are also the plans connected to c4, which currently are probably the biggest threat to black's life, at least what Vishianen played against Wesley So in the just finished tournament of, was the Sinquefield Cup, right? In the Sinquefield Cup. Looked like a very dangerous new direction. In general, after c4, black, with the bishop on e7, he has a choice how he wants to handle white approaching the d5 pawn. You could play passively with c6, and some people have done this, but here white is supposed to be somewhat better. So usually now the black point is that now you go knight to c6 and you recapture with the queen on d5, but you only go knight c6 after white is committed to c4 and you leave the knight flexible for other lines. So here currently the main line, well, this could change, goes cd, queen d5, knight to c3, knight takes, pawn takes, bishop takes d3, queen takes d3. Now black faces a choice how to arrange his rooks. White typically wants to generate some pressure with bishop f4, rook b1, c4, d5, in one form or another, and black wants to neutralize that pressure by any means necessary. The main move has been rook a8. Here Vichy recently came up with this clever little idea of starting with rook b1. I think before that they had tried bishop f4, but black was kind of holding after bishop d6. So this rook b1, I haven't checked very deeply yet, but it looked like it was a serious idea by Vichy. b6, bishop to f4. And after bishop d6, played by So, knight g5. Put some pressure. So maybe you have to play more passively here. I don't know, queen d7 or something along those lines. But it's not a walk in the park. I understand this is very specific theory already, but since I can't cover everything, I'm just trying to give you the outlines here. So black is trying to delay knight c6 because he doesn't always need it in these knight bd2 lines when you can go knight d6. After c4, they do go knight c6, and now both c takes d5 and knight c3 lead to very concrete play, where black should hold, but questions are still being asked as we speak. Then the other way to play is to put your bishop on d6. This has been a Fabiano Caruana favorite and leads to somewhat different play. The bishop is more actively placed on this diagonal, but it does have some drawbacks as well, namely that the queen that no longer covers the d5 square. So that usually means, sorry, I'm talking about the wrong position. If you want to go bishop d6, you do it here without bishop f5, short castle included. That's important. So ignore everything I just said. Bishop d6 plans only with without bishop f5 short castles. What I've said still applies though, that the queen no longer covers the d5 square. So that usually means that once white starts going after this d5 pawn one way or another, black will put his pawn on c6 and try to bring this knight out via d7 or a6. After castles, the main move in this position is pawn to c4, trying to make use of the fact that it's not defended and also that the knight is not defended so that you can't take. Black goes c6 and now white has a range of tries which are all reasonably dangerous. Queen c2 is a very interesting move, has a lot of theory after knight a6, pawn to a3 and bishop to g4, leading to very sharp play after knight to e5. Knight c3 is an interesting move, after which black probably is best advised to simplify again. Now go bishop to f5 or bishop to g4. Bishop f5 is more topical. When, yeah, black is close to equality, but white has managed to ask some questions here. Like, I think Giri beat Caruana and bishop g5, queen a5, and now some goofy move like knight to h4. So black has to, yeah, know what he's doing here as well. And what other critical lines are there? Rook e1 is also a critical move, attacking this guy, tending to lure this bishop to f5 to defend it, and now to play queen b3, targeting b7 and d5, when once again play can become very, very sharp. So yeah, I think that's more or less the breakdown. Nowadays the most solid line is considered to be bishop e7, followed by bishop f5, or by castles, followed by bishop to f5. These things often transpose into each other. But you have to solve this very direct attempt by Vishy Anand against Wesley. So the old line with knight c6 followed by bishop e7 is still kind of playable, but not much en vogue anymore. So yeah, bishop f5, intending bishop e7, short castles, is the current favorite. Bishop d6 I don't think has been refuted, but black has to know a lot of very, very specific sharp theory to deal with the different white attempts that he has here. Queen c2, knight to c3, rook to e1, all require a very special set of skills. So bishop d6, you're very dependent on computer work, while the bishop f5 followed by bishop e7 lines, I think you can play more by hand with common sense. So that's my take on the Petroff. But as you've seen, all these positions are becoming so different so quickly. Like queen c2, you go knight a6 because it threatens knight b4. But I'm not sure if that's a middle game plan or a high level middle game plan. It's just the move you make. After a3, you go bishop g4 because now bishop e4, de, bishop f3, and queen e4, bishop f3, queen f3. You have queen h4, regaining the pawn. Without that, this whole stuff wouldn't work. So, very move by move stuff. And yeah, the Petroff is alive and kicking, and it will stay alive and kicking. But it's not so simple to define in these lines. The pawn goes to c6, then the knight goes to d7 and f6, and you go bishop f5, and then you start a queenside attack, a kingside attack. While in the bishop f5 lines, the bishop goes to e7, then you castle, then you go knight d6, then you go c6, then you recapture, then you go knight d7, knight f6, then you're equal. That's, yeah, chess is too concrete a game for these long-term plans, especially in such a sharp, might be deceptively sharp, because it's sort of symmetrical, but still sharp, very move-by-move position, as the Petroff. Still, I hope that helped to give you bit of an overview about what's what and what goes where. Alright, let's do one more question. I hope it's not on current philosophy or the meaning of life. And then call it a show. We need to leave some material for the season finale. Exciting stuff. Do we have any more questions? We have OneTrickPony, FIDE saying, "Hi Jan, mainline in the e5 bishop b4 English goes like this. well, you could argue if d5 is in the main line, but I get the idea. Bishop b4, bishop g2, castles, e4, knight g5, bishop c3, bc, rook e8, d3, ed, ed, h6. I'm happy if white goes 9f3. Now the computer is very happy for black, showing 0-0 or even very slight edge for black in case of Lila. I find the resulting positions unpleasant to play though. White is a bishop pair, pressure alongside h1, a8 diagonal and solid center. Is there anything sensible I can deviate with on the way to that position, or do I need to accept it and learn to play it? Thanks for your fantastic work on Chess24. Thank you, OneTrickPony. I guess the question is, sorry, where we're talking deviation. I'm pretty sure it won't come as news to you. You can deviate with d5 here. But obviously, that's a very different system, which I think both knight b6 and bishop c5 are still in good health. But we're talking bishop to b4, bishop g2, short castles. Short castles here. There are alternatives along the way, but I do think that the way you mentioned is supposed to be the most critical and the most ambitious, with e4, knight g5 takes, rook to e8. And yeah, frankly, most of my attention, I've looked at this a bit, was focused on f3 as well. I have some very brief notes that say something like d3, takes, h6, knight f3, d6 equals, something along these lines. Which, yeah, I'm pretty sure you've also figured out. But I can sort of hear your point that, yeah, these positions don't look so easy for black to play with the white bishops and potential pressure in the center on the king side and the diagonal. I'm guessing, well, computers are hard to argue with anyway, that they are equal and that black should equalize. I tried a bit after I saw the question to make d5 work, but I wasn't that happy with what Compy had to say here, so I don't think t5 is the way it takes. And queen b3 or whatnot. b6 is a move, but it also looks somewhat artificial. So yeah, I still think d6 is probably the way to play, intending to put this bishop on f5, which looks like a natural enough square, keeping an eye on d3. And then once again, we can start making it a little move by movie, depending on how white plays. If knight d4, I think bishop g4 is a good move. So knight d4 is probably premature. That would kind of lead to the assumption that h3 makes a lot of sense, and I think it does, because h3 also gets ready for bishop f5. When I'm not sure if it's a big deal, but g4 kind of bothers me. So after h3, I guess black is best served being humble, going bishop to d7, maybe preparing queen c8, hitting this guy, but also mainly preparing knight e7, followed by bishop to c6. And here, yeah, I couldn't see anything too scary. If knight h4, let's say knight e7 still works, because bishop e7 is bishop h3, then bishop c6 is coming, and black looked fine. So I thought of the h3 bishop to d7, even though it looks a bit passive. But yeah, black should be doing all right. That led me to, what did I look at? Rook to b1. Just trying to stop any bishop moves. But it looks like b6 here is kind of alright. Just, yeah. Rendering rook b1 sort of pointless. If white now plays slowly, now we can switch plans. Go bishop b7 and knight a5 or knight e7. And black is fine. So I guess the critical line is something like b6, knight d4, forcing us to change the structure. Takes, d5. Here I saw there are some correspondence games where they play h3, which makes sense, stopping bishop g4, and also preparing to meet bishop f5 with g4. I'm not sure if immediately. I think some correspondence game with c5, c6, g4, bishop h7, f4. Very complex play, but looked somewhat scary for black to me. So my not very deep research made me believe that maybe we don't go bishop f5 here, but we go bishop e6. Teasing d takes c4, exchange sacrifices, or just queen d7 followed by c6. So probably sooner or later white closes the position with c5. And after c6, white does have the two bishops, but his structure is not too flexible, and this bishop on g2 is not much of a powerhouse. So I think black is fine here. Say bishop f4, knight d7. preparing queen f6 to hit the d4 pawn. And I couldn't see anything overly scary. And if white goes g4, then we haven't lost the tempo with bishop to f5. And normally we can punish it by going knight d7, preparing f5, or sometimes knight h7, preparing queen h4. So yeah, I could not find anything I disliked too much. I kind of hear you, and I get the notion that these positions look somewhat unpleasant. Bishop e3 was also, I believe, a serious option. But yeah, I couldn't find anything too scary. Bishop e3 makes some sense because it keeps an eye on the c5 square in case of d5 and prepares knight d4 and whatnot. I wanted bishop e3, now I wanted bishop f5. And then once again, play move by move. After knight d4 takes and d5, and now the argument is that with the bishop committed to e3, this g4 f4 plan no longer works because the bishop is hanging. And therefore black should be okay. Enough at a bishop f5 if white goes to h3. Now we can play concretely, go knight e5, takes de, hitting this pawn, and seems to equalize as well. So yeah, that's my not very deep research into this line. First of all, thanks for mentioning it, because I wasn't aware that it's, as I said, a respectable line. I only had like here where takes h6 equal. And yeah, I do think it's a respectable line, but I do not see any particular problems if we just go h6, d6, and then adjust our plan according to what white does. Rook b1, b6, h3, bishop d7, and what else did I say? I forgot already. Bishop e3, bishop f5, and knight d4 takes d5. So yeah, I think black is okay everywhere, as usual. I'm not smart enough to argue with the engines, but I kind of hear you, and I did not have this line on my radar. But maybe what I said makes enough sense to make it playable. More time could certainly be spent on it, but it also does not look that scary. Even for a bishop fan like me, these pawns are such inflexible idiots. d4 always weakens the c4 pawn, so white's dynamic potential, I would say, is not that high here. This bishop is currently quite well restricted. So yeah, I think playable line for black, but an option I wasn't really aware of as an option for white. So thank you, OneTrickPony, for bringing it up. Was it OneTrickPony? Sorry, broken screen with little engine again. Yeah, OneTrickPony. It was. That brings us to the end of today's show. Thank you guys for watching. Apologies if there was a slight lag or cut off sometimes. I felt like sometimes the mouse was reacting slowly, which might bring audio problems. I hope it's not the case. If not, ignore what I just said. If you're watching this when it comes out, I don't know when it comes out, but there is a Banter Blitz with world champion Magnus Carlsen, and I'll probably be hanging out in the background, waving awkwardly on Friday, the 6th of September, 6 p.m. Is it the 6th? Yeah, 6 p.m. So check that out. I'm sure the millions of viewers of Jan's opening clinic really have to be directed towards the Magnus show. So there you go. And see you guys next time.